Travis Walton ran through the forest, but not for fun. He was running because a blinding light had just struck him. He didn't know what it was at first. One moment, he was walking with his logging crew in the mountains of Arizona. The next, his world had exploded with white fire. His body lifted slightly, and he felt an intense heat. Not from the sun or a fire, but from something else entirely. Behind him, his coworkers screamed. Some froze. Others backed away, shielding their eyes. "Travis!" someone shouted. And then, he vanished. Earlier that evening, Travis and 6 other men were finishing their logging shift. The tall pines swayed in the cool mountain wind, the smell of sawdust and pine thick in the air. They joked and laughed, unaware that the night would turn into something none of them could explain. The men had worked together for years. They knew each tree, each clearing. They were in familiar territory. But something unfamiliar was creeping in from the darkening sky. A strange glow appeared above the treetops, growing brighter by the second. Mike Rogers, one of the crew, was the first to see it clearly. "It's a ship," he whispered, though no one else moved. The object hovered, pulsating with orange and white lights, spinning slowly. The crew stood in awe, frozen, staring as the object glided silently above the forest. No sound of engines, no rumble of rotors, just a light that felt alive, like it was watching them. Travis squinted. He laughed nervously. "It's probably a helicopter, some military test." But the glow was too big, too bright, too perfect. Suddenly the light snapped toward Travis. It wasn't fast. It moved as if drawn by him, pulsing brighter with each step he took. His heart pounded. He yelled to the others, but his voice barely carried over the hum that now filled the air. The crew tried to run toward him, but the forest felt wrong. Deeper, darker. Shadows stretched strangely, twisting around the trees. Then the light hit him directly, a searing brilliance that lifted him off the ground. His hands and legs tingled as if electricity were running through his veins. The other men could only watch. Some fell to the ground in shock. One dropped his axe. The air smelled like burning metal and ozone, stinging their eyes and throats. Travis floated just above the dirt, his body trembling, hair standing on end. Then, as if a curtain of light had been pulled back, he was gone. The forest became silent again, but the men knew the impossible had happened. Their friend was gone, and the sky seemed to close in above them. The crew panicked. They yelled his name, ran through the trees, searching for him. Mike Rogers tried to recall the layout of the land, but everything looked different. Trees seemed taller, shadows deeper, and the ground was uneven in ways they hadn't noticed before. Hours felt like minutes. The object was nowhere to be seen, and the men were left with fear, disbelief, and an urgent need to report it. Finally, they returned to the logging camp, shaking, unsure how to explain what they had witnessed. When they called authorities, the story sounded impossible. Police officers, investigators, even local townsfolk were skeptical. "How could one man disappear without a trace in the middle of the forest?" one asked. The crew explained the blinding light, the way Travis had been lifted, the hum in the air, and the strange ozone smell. Every single one of them passed polygraph tests, leaving investigators stunned. Yet still, they struggled to believe. Meanwhile, Travis's experience had just begun. Inside the blinding light, he was surrounded by a room unlike anything on Earth. The walls glowed faintly with pulsing lines of blue and red light, and strange shapes floated mid-air. He tried to move, but his body felt heavy, unresponsive, yet weightless at the same time. Figures appeared in the shadows, tall, thin, with eyes that seemed to pierce his mind. The beings didn't speak, yet he understood their presence, a silent language of thought and sensation. He watched the landscape below, the forest shrinking as if the earth itself had been left behind. Fear clawed at him, but a strange calm also washed over him, a sensation he could not describe. The beings approached, their hands reaching out without touching, scanning him. Travis tried to scream, but no sound escaped his lips. Time felt warped. Minutes stretched into hours, or maybe only seconds passed. He had no way of knowing. The only certainty, he was no longer in the world he knew. Back on the ground, the logging crew made a desperate decision. They called the sheriff and returned to the area where Travis had disappeared, shining lights and shouting his name. They knew that something had taken him, something beyond human understanding. The forest was dark, ominous, and silent except for their voices echoing between the trees. Then, in the distance, a faint glow appeared again, pulsing just like before. The men froze. Their hearts sank. And somewhere, far above the forest, Travis's journey had only just begun. Travis woke with a start. The walls glowed faintly red and blue, pulsing in rhythm with some unseen heartbeat. He couldn't move, yet he floated just above the metallic floor. He blinked and realized the room was huge, wider than any forest clearing he had seen from the ground. Strange shapes hovered midair, spinning slowly, emitting soft hums. His arms and legs tingled with the sensation of electric weightlessness. He reached for the walls, but they seemed alive, breathing, pulsing, almost responding to his thoughts. Travis tried to call out, but no sound came. Only the soft hum filled the silence, vibrating inside his chest. Fear clawed at him, yet a strange calm kept him from panicking. Outside, the forest still burned with tension. The logging crew had returned to town, frantically reporting Travis's disappearance to the authorities. The sheriff initially dismissed them, until each man passed a lie detector test. The results stunned investigators. All 7 men were telling the truth. Every word, every panic-stricken reaction, verified. But even armed with the crew's testimony, the authorities had no explanation. To the world, Travis Walton was missing. To those men, he had vanished in front of their eyes, lifted into some blinding, otherworldly light. Back inside the craft, Travis began to notice the patterns in the walls. They weren't random. Lines of glowing blue and red crisscrossed and pulsed, forming symbols that seemed to communicate without words. He realized that the strange figures, tall, thin beings, were studying him. Their movements were silent, deliberate, almost surgical. Travis's mind raced. Are they hostile? He wondered. But the beings did not attack. Instead, they observed, touching panels of light that responded to his thoughts. He realized he could sense them, not through sight or hearing, but through a direct connection of thought, a strange form of communication. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Travis had no way of knowing. He floated through corridors that curved impossibly, each corner revealing new glowing panels and strange shapes. He saw others, shadows moving silently, some like humans, others unlike anything he had ever imagined. He tried to speak to them, but nothing emerged. Then a wave of understanding washed over him. They weren't trying to hurt him, at least not in the way he understood. It was an experiment, an observation, and he was the subject. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the logging crew stayed in town, restless. Each night they drove back to the forest, scanning the sky with flashlights, binoculars, even homemade tracking devices. Neighbors whispered, local reporters arrived, and rumors spread. "He's gone forever," some said. But the men never gave up hope. They knew Travis had been taken by something that defied explanation, and they were determined to prove to the world that he had been real enough to vanish in front of 7 witnesses. Inside the craft, Travis felt a sudden jolt of energy. He was lifted higher, into a chamber filled with shimmering lights, where walls curved into impossible angles. A table-like structure appeared beneath him. On it, objects floated, tools, devices, and shapes he could not identify. The beings extended their hands toward him. He felt no threat, only curiosity, as if they wanted him to understand something fundamental about life itself. He shivered, not from fear, but from a sudden realization of his own smallness in a universe far larger than he had ever imagined. On the 5th day, the world outside changed. The logging crew had contacted federal investigators, reporters, even UFO enthusiasts. Phone calls, interviews, and frantic drives into the forest consumed them. Yet the forest remained silent. The place where Travis had vanished seemed untouched. No scorch marks, no footprints, no evidence. The lack of proof frustrated everyone, except the men who had seen it with their own eyes. They knew the truth, even if the world did not. Inside the craft, Travis felt himself being pulled forward. A large circular chamber appeared. In its center, a soft glowing orb emitted waves of light that seemed to scan him. He realized the beings were studying his reactions, his mind, his body, but without causing pain. A vision passed through his mind. Strange landscapes, stars he didn't recognize, worlds beyond imagination. For the first time, he understood the enormity of what he was witnessing. The universe was larger, stranger, and more intelligent than he had ever known. Suddenly, light surrounded him completely. The hum intensified. He felt weight return to his limbs. The craft's chamber dissolved into nothingness, and he was back in the forest clearing where he had disappeared. His coworkers rushed forward, shocked to see him alive. Travis fell to his knees, exhausted, his hair singed and his clothes scorched. The crew surrounded him, shouting, trembling, relieved. Travis tried to explain, but words felt inadequate. How could anyone understand what he had just experienced? Authorities arrived quickly, flashing lights cutting through the night. Travis's story was questioned, tested, doubted, yet every detail matched what the crew had reported. Lie detectors, interviews, and official records confirmed the unbelievable. Travis Walton had disappeared into a UFO, traveled through unimaginable space and light, and returned 5 days later. The forest seemed quiet again, but those who witnessed it, Travis and his crew, knew the truth. Some things in the sky were not human, not earthbound, and forever beyond comprehension.